I wanted to share some thoughts with you from John chapter 12, verse 24. And I first came to this passage through finding some lyrics in a song. And I've listened a lot to Elevation Worship across these last couple of months. They write some brilliant songs. And there was one song in particular called There Is a Cloud, and it had these words: "Every seed buried in sorrow, you will call forth in its time. You are Lord, Lord of the harvest, calling our hope now to arise." And it reminded me of the passage that talks about the grain of wheat, and that is John chapter 12, verse 24. And it says this: "Very truly, I tell you, unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds." The Message puts it like this, and I really like how the Message describes it. It says, "Listen carefully. Unless a grain of wheat is buried in the ground, dead to the world, it is never any more than a grain of wheat. But if it is buried, it sprouts and reproduces itself many times over. In the same way, anyone who holds on to life just as it is destroys that life. But if you let it go, reckless in your love, you'll have it forever, real and eternal." And so I was thinking about this, and I did some reading, and this is what some of the Bible commentaries had to say. First of all, it talked about the fact that one commentary said that this is a brilliant picture of Jesus. Jesus was the single seed with a capital S, the perfect picture of a single grain of wheat, which only becomes fruitful under certain circumstances. Unless the grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. A single grain of wheat has within itself a germ of life, which has the capacity to become abundantly fruitful. However, that ordinary little seed cannot increase or multiply while it's sitting inside a sack of corn. It has incredible potential, but without first falling into the ground alone and then dying, it's limited in that potential. Another commentary said that this process, apparently destructive, calls for faith in the sower. And that faith engages the forces of the seed and allows it to multiply itself. To preserve the seed from this burial in the ground is to prevent it from attaining its best development and use. A simple illustration of life through death, life triumphing over death. Now, what I thought about was that thinking about death is challenging. We're built to survive, but we know that death is part of life. I was thinking that it's difficult to think about the death of something, of things ending and maybe changing. Within the last few months, we've had to try and come to terms with loss and change, with uncertainty about what is to come. Psalm 30 verse 5 says, "Weeping may stay for the night, but rejoicing comes in the morning." And I like that picture of hope just around the corner. I'm sure that we have all seen or heard or felt things that have caused us to weep. And weeping is in the Bible and is nothing for us to be ashamed of. Our faith in Jesus helps us to look forward, trusting that he is working things out. I think that this picture can be applied to our lives as believers. As we change and mature and are transformed by the Holy Spirit, sometimes things have to come to an end. We have to let things go, and we certainly need to let things go where we know it's hindering the work of the Holy Spirit in us. Another commentary talked about how Paul expands on this picture of seeds in 1 Corinthians 15, verse 36 to 42. The seed which is planted seems to die. It sacrifices everything and is lost so far as it appears. But in truth, the seed must be planted in order to become what it was always meant to be. Just as the seed must lose its life to fulfill its ultimate purpose,